it's the way that just being a Black woman is just everything you do is politicized, right? And it's a double standard for how you're treated. It's a double standard for how the world views you. Yeah.
And because they're both demonstrative, it's like they're athletes.
Right. And also that part. And it's also the gender piece of it too, right?
Yes.
So actually this white creator on TikTok, I don't usually watch white dudes, but it was a really interesting TikTok because he was like, oh, this is classless. But then he's like showing hockey players like literally beating each other up and like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hello, beautiful people. I am Deja Riley.
And I am Alicia Ferguson.
And you are listening to Dose of Duality, the podcast where we dive into deep conversation, cultivating a sense of community around the state of coexistence. Alicia. Hey, girl. Hey. How are you feeling?
I feel so good. I feel like the conversation we just had.
I know, right?
Like before the cameras, before y'all joined in.
Yes.
Was nourishing.
It was.
That's the word I want to use for it. It was nourishing.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that. And you're feeling good on the inside.
I feel good in the inside. I'm a little hot. The temperature's warm in here.
Yo, it's warm. It's getting warmer outside. But
It is.
I think I was confused today because I walked out of the house with like my heavier jean jacket on. And it was a little chilly this morning, but I had like a full day of errands to run. So I was like walking outside and then I'm like, I'm really hot.
Yeah.
So then I took the jacket off. Now I'm like, okay, I got short sleeves on, so this feels appropriate. But then now my pits are sweating. I stepped in here and I was like, it's like a heat wave.
I'm legitimately sweating right now.
Yes, right?
And I've been trying to not wear deodorant. I wore it today because I was going to be around more people. But I've been trying to not wear as much deodorant.
Wait, what do you wear like instead of deodorant?
Lemon or limes.
You take the lime and you just like rub it underneath your arm and it works for you.
It works.
Even when you're doing like a workout.
So I don't do it then because I haven't tested under like heavy endurance.
Because that's what I need to know.
Yeah.
Is like if it will work for me when I'm doing like activity.
We should try. Let's try it the next couple.
I will.
I'll try it the next couple days.
I will.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm going to be a little nervous about it because when I'm teaching my classes, I do have to be around people.
That's the thing. So you got. I'm gonna put my armpit down. But what happened was, so I have eczema normally. Right?
Okay.
And I've had it always growing up, but I've learned to just deal in the things I need to do.
Yeah.
But maybe like 2 months ago, my whole armpit just started like breaking out.
Really?
And I was using the same deodorant that I've been using for years. Now, it's not the best. It was probably like, I don't know names out there, but insert drugstore like deodorant.
Yeah.
Right? Like nothing fancy.
Yeah.
And it just started like making me discolored in my arms. It started like the skin started getting like really itchy.
Yeah.
And so it's like just the pigmentation is like really off. And most importantly, it irritates me.
Yeah.
So I had to like kind of revamp. I went to social media because that's what we do.
Yes. Like TikTok.
Yeah,
and,
like people will tell me what to do. And then people have really good suggestions. Some people said do the Aztec clay as an armpit detox.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep. So that was one. There's this Donna Karan antiperspirant that doesn't have aluminum in it.
Yep.
That people said was good. My friend actually brought it for me. Shout out to you, Tiffany. You're amazing for getting it for me.
Yeah.
And I use that occasionally when I know I'm going to be around a lot of people.
Yeah.
And, high endurance.
Yeah.
But really, I've just been freeballing my armpits.
All right, girl. Well, listen, I ain't never smelled you, so
thank you.
It must be working. And I tell you. But honestly, like for me, my biggest fear, I don't know if I've ever told you this, but like I have this fear of smelling funky. Really.
It's a fear?
It is a fear. Like it's an actual fear of smelling funky. And I've had it since I was like a young girl, like taking gym class. Because I remember that my gym clothes always used to like smell really, really bad. And you have to go back to class after that.
Yeah.
So like I remember being at the end of the day so self-conscious, like squeezing my armpit,
together?
like trying to like not be in anybody's face or too close up. And that just followed me. Like so now even when I'm working out, like if I go to another gym or something like that, or I'm taking a class, you will see me for sure go straight to the like dressing room afterwards, and I'm gonna be like with some sort of like spray or something.
Now I'm gonna watch you.
I don't know. I know.
I didn't know this, but like now it's like it's in my head, and I'm like, "Where's Deja?"
So let me also tell you, in my cubby at Lululemon Studio, and I think most of my coworkers probably know this, I always have like a little panel of perfumes, like the little tester sizes.
Options.
Yep.
Just in case.
Mm-hmm. And I put it on before class.
You know what?
And in between.
At least we know that you're never the one. If we smell something,
I hope it's
not true.
Literally my worst nightmare. But yeah, I don't know. Like, and so I've always worn, since I was a teenager, men's deodorant.
Okay, why men's deodorant?
It's stronger. And the women's deodorant.
So who told you smell like?
I don't think anybody ever told me that. I think what I used to observe, though, as a young girl, is when people would talk about other people smelling. Like, I remember locker room conversations where I would just kind of, like, be there, like, listening in. And people would just be, like, trash-talking people.
High school and middle school is so mean.
Yeah, kids can be cruel.
Yeah, so mean.
So I was like, that's never going to be me.
Yeah.
So I just was always conscious of it.
It wasn't.
I mean, honestly. But yeah, I don't know. That followed me, and I started wearing men's deodorant. I still wear men's deodorant.
So you know what I did? So yesterday I was at I might be an actress, guys.
Yes. No, not might be.
You know, let me speak that into existence.
You are an actress. You did a table read.
I did a table read. So I did a table read yesterday, but I'm used to not wearing deodorant.
Yeah.
So it was all day. It was like 12 to 8.
Okay.
So like by midday, I'm in there like, ooh, it's warm. It's a bunch of people in here. Like, it's warm, right? And so there was this woman next to me, and I was like, I know this is weird, but like, I'm doing this thing where I don't wear deodorant. Like,
yeah.
Do you have like a body spray or something?
Yeah.
Because I'm starting to like, I got a little like, but not like pungent, just like wear from the day.
Yeah.
If that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
And then so she's a theater kid. She was like, oh, we just need hand sanitizer. She was like, that's an old theater trick. Just throw a little hand sanitizer under your armpits and the alcohol kills it for a little bit. Wow. And that's what we did. And it worked.
Oh.
Yeah. I wouldn't recommend it because it'll dry out your armpits. So don't do that normally.
Okay.
But in a crunch, I was just like skeet. Like, like I was fresh. I was fresh before the people came in. Yeah.
Listen.
Yeah.
You know, I think we're giving the people some valuable tips here.
Take notes, y'all.
Take notes. Take what you wish.
That's the thing. A lot of people have like these allergic reactions to the aluminum in deodorants. And if I'm being real, it sounds really like privileged to me. I was like, doesn't matter because my armpits are fine until it wasn't fine. Like I've had friends who've had it and they've gone through their journeys of figuring out different things. Yeah. And it just wasn't on my radar because it didn't like, affect me. And I was like, oh, okay, got it. Like this is a thing. Yeah. Yes, I'm navigating now.
All right. Listen, I'm going to be navigating with you. And speaking of privilege, you just mentioned privilege.
We did.
I think this is a great segue to our conversation today. Let me just grab the book.
Let it speak for itself.
Our guest of today, our guest of honor, is not only just this fabulous woman that I am so inspired by, that we are both so inspired by. She is so active, like in the community, but also just in her own life. Like reading this book, I'm like, wow, like you're doing the internal work beyond just the work that you're doing out in the world. You're like really digging deep, doing the internal work. And so as I talk about this speaker, this writer, this author of the Body Liberation Project, you know, I will start with one thing that she said in the book that really resonated with me is that you can be privileged and oppressed.
Yes.
And I was like, oh, yes.
Seen,
right?
Seen.
So many moments in this book where I was like, seen.
Yeah.
I feel seen. I feel heard.
Yeah.
I feel acknowledged. Let's not tell the world who she is because you know that's not what we do around here. But we will introduce her by name. I'm going to let you do the honors.
I love how the Chrissy King. Everyone give it up. We need to give it up. Your cars, watching on YouTube, give it up. We're really excited. We're very excited for this.
Oh,
we are.
Thank you
Chrissy,
for
let the
having me.
people
I'm
know
so excited.
who you be.
Well, first off, let me just say, I also feel nourished by the conversation we had before this even started. So I'm like even more excited to just like keep this going.
Yes.
But yes, I'm Chrissy King. I'm a writer, an author now, I suppose. A speaker. I used to be a fitness coach and trainer. I do a lot of work in the wellness industry around anti-racism and creating a diverse and inclusive industry. And so much of my work also is focused on body liberation.
Yeah.
And my book just came out 3 weeks ago today. And I am just so excited that I got to like put this work into the world and share things that are just like super important to me.
Yeah.
So one of our girls did your makeup for the book
Yes.
launch.
Oh my God.
Pep. We love Pep. We always name drop Pep.
I know.
You can't tell
She's
we're
so
huge
great.
fans. And she did this post about you.
Yeah.
And then she said, like, oh my God, Chrissy's a book baddie now. And I was like literally like dying. I said, not a book baddie. And she was like, that's what she called herself.
I did.
And I was like,
I called myself that.
yes, you better be a book baddie.
I
now.
did. Yes. I don't know if someone said it to me I can't even remember, but I was like, yeah, I'm a book baddie now. Pepper is so great, by the way. I met Pepper at the launch of this podcast, matter of fact, because Deja was glowing. I'm like, Deja, who did your makeup? And Pepper was there, and she's amazing.
Yeah, she is.
Sweet.
She's phenomenal. Well, one of the things that we love to do is break the ice, but like we've done it already. But
broken.
Another thing that I loved about your book is that it carried with it a lot of affirmations. I talked about the part at the end of every chapter where you are like, okay, we're going to take this and put it into practice. And I think that's so important. I think that, not just telling everybody what's problematic out there, but also giving people resources and tools to be able to be better and do better is important. And, as we talk about affirming ourselves, my dear friend Tochi actually just put out these cards called Today's Word. And so Alicia normally brings intention cards, but today we're going to pull some of Tochi's.
I'm very
I like this.
Cards, Black owned, everybody. Go
Yes.
Okay, so we're going to do what we normally do. I'm just going to shuffle the deck and just take a minute to ground yourself. So maybe like shake it out.
Maybe hit that Bernie.
Take a look. Honestly, we got to get a video of us like doing it all together.
Book reference, y'all. We want you to be included, but you got to buy the book reference.
At least get an Audible, okay? And just take a deep breath. And if you feel called to, maybe close your eyes just to center yourself for a bit. And we are going to each choose a card. I'm going to spread them out on the table and then just pull one back. And then we'll start with you, Chrissy. Okay. You'll read first and then we'll go down the line.
Yeah.
All right, awesome.
Perfect. I love this game.
Can we be mindful of these?
I like it. Okay. Ooh.
Oh, wait, we're all gonna pick, and then we'll.
Oh, okay. Okay. Don't go yet.
Yep.
All right. I was jumping. I was excited.
Yeah,
Okay.
but you felt it immediately, so that's good.
You felt it. Okay. Now.
Yes.
Okay. So excited for this card. Okay. It says you deserve consistency, especially from yourself. So be consistent in giving yourself the love, care, and attention you deserve.
Yes.
I love this card.
I love that too.
Yes.
That's good.
It's very good.
I'm also going to carry that with me too.
Yeah. And we'll get into the book, but I feel like this is some of the things I talk about in the book, right? Like we are deserving of the love we give to others.
Yes.
How are we doing that for ourselves on a regular basis? So
Yes.
And the
I like it.
consistency. With
Mhm.
it. Even the consistency it took for you to put the book out.
Yeah.
I mean,
Let's
that's
talk about that. That's a whole.
That's the
whole thing right there.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that you were talking about being deserving of that love. And one of my favorite quotes by Buddha is, you more than anybody else in this universe deserve your love and affection. And I say that quote all the time to myself because I'm like, yes, I deserve that too.
Yeah.
Like I freely give it away, but sometimes I don't freely give it back to myself, or try to soak it up for myself. So yes.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
Receiving.
Yeah.
Okay. Do what makes you happy. You have full permission to choose and prioritize your joy. So I have a neon sign in my house, and it's above this record player. It has all my dad's records that he gave me on the side. Real sentimental. And the sign says, do what makes you happy.
Oh, wow.
Which is hilarious.
That's so perfect.
So I need to like
perfect.
insert photo. I'll post it so we can see. But
yes.
I look at this every single day.
Wow.
And it's nice to like get to flip the switch on it to really like let it illuminate. So yeah, this really resonates. And I'm doing what makes me happy. I think I've charted a new course with a lot of things in life and these transitions. And the guiding light is, does this feel good? Does this bring joy?
Yeah.
Am I surrounded by the folks and the people that like light me up inside? So,
Yeah.
Yeah. And I love the full permission.
Yeah.
Tochi,
you're spot on. These are great. These are great. Okay. Ooh, this one's a little lengthy. But, you know, I'm feeling the first part. So let's see. Challenge your distractions by catching yourself when you begin wandering off into an unintended direction. The next time you find yourself drifting into distraction, reroute and be intentional about redirecting that energy into the lane you actually want to go. Wow. That is very good for me. But it's interesting because I can oftentimes be distracted by my past and the things that have happened in my past and like allow them to travel into the present and trickle into the present, and they don't belong here. They're behind me for a reason, you know? So I like that, like challenging my distractions and like reminding myself to be intentional and like redirect my focus.
Yeah.
So this was spot on for me too.
I love it.
Was there that one quote about there's a 1,000 new beginnings? And that's what when you just said challenging that's what it's like, okay, so I slipped here. Okay, just get back to it. Oops, stumbled a little bit here. Just like come right back to it.
Yeah. You know, interesting enough, when I was reading your book, Chrissy, I really liked the part where you were like, I think you said this in the acknowledgments, but you also said it several times through the book, like, you know, I'm going to fumble. I'm going to make mistakes. I'm not going to be perfect. Like, I don't, you know, claim to be, but like, I'm doing it. Like you know what I mean? I'm going to do it the best way that I know how. Like even that quote at the end where I was like, oh yeah, I used to say that all the time. Like charge it to my head, not to my heart. Like if I forget something or if I fall short of something, you know, because I'm doing the best that I can in this moment. And I think there are so many things that like I'm reminded of as I hear your journey is like at that moment, you were doing the best that you could.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Like in whatever moment it was in your fitness journey, in your like, you know, life's journey, you were always doing the best that you could with what you had. And I think that's an important thing for us to all acknowledge is like, we might not be where we want to be today, but like we're going to get there. And today we're doing the best that we can.
Yeah,
absolutely. And it was so important for me to include that because I think, especially when you're like putting a body of work in the world, right? And then people are going to read it and they're like, you did this wrong. You didn't get this right. And I'm like, y'all, I'm telling you now, I know I got something wrong. Like I fully acknowledge I got something wrong. I'm learning. I invite you to give me your critique and I'll take that into consideration. But like, I don't know all the things. And as you said, I'm doing the best with the information I have now. And I'm growing, changing, evolving, learning, just like all of us are.
Yeah.
Oh,
I like you even in the book too. Even when you were referencing like taking space, right? And you were just like, my bad, y'all.
Yeah, I took that too far.
He was like, I actually had that wrong.
Yes.
Like, let me expand a little bit more because I have new information.
Yeah, absolutely.
And with this new information, like this is now where I stand with that. So I even appreciate that because you could have easily been like, I'm gonna tell y'all what I don't know.
No, because it's like, why not acknowledge that? Oh, I said this thing and now I've learned new information. So let me circle back and like add some more to it. And like, we should all give ourselves the permission to do that because I think there's like, there's no reason to act like we've done all the things right. We know all the things. Like we all know we don't know all the things. And we all know we aren't getting it all right. So like, let's acknowledge and normalize that we've learned more. We've come back. We've corrected course corrected. I even talk about like on my social media, like I've never deleted any old posts, right? So if you go all the way back, I have before and after pictures on there. I do things that I don't ascribe to now, but I don't need to delete it because like that's where I was then, and I was doing the best I could at the time, and now I've learned, and here I am now, right? I'm not going to pretend like I've never done those things. I've just learned and have evolved, and that's just what it is.
I love that you also acknowledged that because I'll hand them to you. I love that you acknowledge that too, because it actually used to be a thing that I did quite often, was like go through, revamp. I'm like, I'm in a new space. Let's just clear it all out. But actually, I'm inspired by what you said. And now I like don't feel a sense of like necessity to do that. Like I don't feel like that I have to do that, because this was my truth at the time. And now this is my truth now. And then whatever my truth is in the future will be in the future. And it's actually kind of nice to go back and look at how far you've come.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
I think that for you, acknowledging the fact that you did post before and after pictures, and now you're dismantling diet culture like that.
Right. Like,
look at how far just that, you know?
And I think also too, like, it's so important, because I always say to people when we're having these conversations, right? Like, it's so easy for us to look at other people and be like, why are they doing that? Like, girl, you were just doing that yourself, right? So like for me, I'm like, I can understand, because I was in that place, right? And so it's like holding people with like compassion and grace, because you remember you too at one point were probably in that place, and like they're still on their journey. So respect that they're unlearning at their own pace, just like I unlearned at my own pace, right? Yeah.
That is the love and the compassion, though, is like acknowledging like I don't know it all, and like I'm not too afraid of like looking good.
Yes.
To admit that like I got it wrong. Like my bad. Like I can own that. I can sit with that. I can say that, and like I can also show myself grace and compassion and move forward from that space.
Absolutely. And also it takes the pressure off, right? Because if I walked around acting like I knew all the things, I would be nerve-wracking, because I'm like, oh my gosh, I got to say this. And I'm like, no, I'm telling everyone that I'm doing the best I can. And I mess up sometimes. And I'm taking the pressure off myself to be the quote unquote expert, because I'm not the expert. Yeah.
There's a lot of that in the wellness industry, though.
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
The gurus.
The gurus, right? I'm like, no, gurus.
Self-proclaimed guru of like, but how did you make that title for yourself?
Exactly.
Like, yes.
Exactly.
The university guru.
Right. And then it also makes it feel like there are certain people like in the wellness industry that like have all the answers, right? And we should be like seeking out their information, because like they have it all. And it's like none of it works like that. And who wants to be a guru? Like, come on.
Yeah.
It sounds like a lot of pressure.
Sounds like a lot of pressure. I don't need that in my life.
It's a lot.
Okay, so Chrissy, I have to ask, how did you find the courage to truly call people out? Like when you saw that something was, because in your book, I'm like, oh my goodness, like the honesty. I'm like, it's so good. But I'm also like, you know, I'm sure you didn't wake up and then overnight you were like, yeah, I could just like put this all out there. So like, take us there. Like take us on that journey with you.
Absolutely. So when I got into fitness, I was working at like a corporate job. I was working for the federal government. I got into fitness as a talking about the book because I wanted to like lose weight and be skinny. The reason a lot of people go to fitness. Eventually became a trainer. And then I was like really starting to feel burnout at my job. And I was like, I would love to do this fitness thing full time. But like also I was making really good money at my job. So I was just like, I don't really know how this is going to work. So I was on Instagram one day and literally just like scrolling, and I saw this woman talking about like business coach related things specific to fitness. And I was like, oh, she seems like cool. So I follow her, and I remember I commented on, and she like a larger platform, and I commented, and she like commented right back, and I was like, oh wow, that's refreshing.
Yeah.
And so then she was like running like a 6-day free whatever, and it turns out it was just like a course to like sell you something,
yes, a larger
right?
course.
But I didn't know that. I was just like, oh my gosh, she's giving us all this free information. I love this. But then she sold this a larger course, and I like immediately joined. I didn't even like really even research the woman. Like I was just like, I like what she's saying. Here's my $6,000. Take my money, right? But anyway, I ended up working with her for like 3 years. And so she's a person who like really was like, okay, this is how you have an email list. Like you should have a website. She's like, you should blog. And so I was like, okay. So I started doing all those things. And I was kind of new to the fitness and wellness space, and I was like starting to go to a lot of events and like see things, and I was like, wow, this space is like really white, like really lacking diversity, really don't like this. And so it was like these conversations I was having like with friends and just like offline, but I never really mixed it with my online content, because I was like, a fitness person is supposed to talk about like what's the best thing to eat after your workout, right? Like not talk about diversity. But I was like so annoyed by the situation. So I started working on this blog post, and I was going to talk about the lack of diversity in fitness. I told my business coach about it. She's like, oh my God, that's a great idea. You should definitely do it. And she's a white woman though.
Is this Jill?
Yes, Jill.
Okay.
Jill Coleman. Yeah.
Got it.
And I'm like, okay, but you're white. So like, I don't know if you really understand. Like, okay, cool, whatever you say. But then she so I wrote the post, I wrote the blog, but I like never posted it. And so then she came back to me like a few months later. She's like, hey, whatever happened with that blog? I'm like, I don't know. I'm just like, not gonna, I don't know. And she was like, listen, you can like be the change you want to see, or you can like just not. It's like, it's your choice. You can't do both though. You can't make change and like be nervous about creating waves. And I was like, okay. So I was literally working at my job still, and I had to like travel for work. So I was like, I'm going to post this while I'm traveling. I can't go on the internet. I always like to tell this story. It's funny now because also like no one was following me. Like no one was reading my content. So I was like, what was I so scared about? But I was nervous, right? So then I posted it. I came back to the internet like 4 hours later, and I was like, oh my gosh, people read it and they shared it. People like it. And it was so scary at the time. But after I did that, like it wasn't even just because people read and shared it. It was also because like people sent me messages, like other Black women, other women of color, to be like, I've been feeling this way for a long time. I'm so happy that you're talking about this. And I was like, okay. So I did the thing that felt really scary. It wasn't as scary as I thought it was going to be. And also it was resonating with people. So I knew that this was like something that we need to talk about more. And so I think that first thing, I always say that was like the turning point for me, because like after I did that, I was like, oh, I can talk about the things that are important to me, and I can talk about them in the fitness space. And after I did that, I was like, oh, it just gave me the freedom and the permission to feel like I could keep having those conversations that are difficult. And also, like, it's important to note that this was like in 2017. So, right, this is like pre-George Floyd, when all of a sudden the wellness industry is like, racism is real.
Yeah.
So it was a conversation that people weren't having as much back then.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, that's good.
Jill.
I mean, honestly, shout out to Jill. And that's one of the people too. I'm like charged to my heart. I forgot to mention her in the acknowledgments.
No, but you mentioned her in the book.
I did. You're right.
And I remember Jill.
Yes. Okay, you did remember Jill. Okay, thank you.
So you acknowledged her.
Okay. Because I was like, oh man, I read the acknowledgments. I forgot to put Jill in.
No, you talked about
but I
her.
do talk around the book. You're right.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and we just gave a shout out to Jill.
Jill Coleman. Jill Fit.
Listen, we love Jill. Now, who we don't love is Diane.
I don't love Diane. No.
It started with Diane, but there was a
So many.
handful of
There's
just
so many.
that really like just made me feel charged up. Like I was actually like angry reading some of these comments. And then to talk to you and hear that was like the watered down version.
Well, first of all, I didn't even know this. I'm like, because I'm new to publishing, right? I'm like, if they email me, I should have the right to say exactly what they said.
Yeah.
There's apparently like you need permission from people. And I'm like, why would I need permission? I didn't give you permission to assault my inbox with this.
Okay.
So yeah, that's like the watered down version of it. And it's wild to me though. It's like not even just the book, not even those stories. Like anytime I write an article for anywhere that's like even slightly related to race, someone is going to find my email on the internet and is going to email me like just the most ridiculous vitriol things. I'm like, who takes the time to say, not only do I like this this article, I'm going to go find this person's email and take the time to tell them how stupid they think they are. It's like, who does that?
Yeah.
Who has the time, the energy?
Who?
Like, and so as you were receiving some of these messages, how did you like protect your peace? How did you separate yourself from like what you might have been feeling initially when you opened that
Because
email?
assaulting your inbox.
Right.
That was the perfect
personal.
way to describe it.
Yep.
Like, when you said it, I was like, yeah, I felt that.
Yeah. I think when I first started getting emails like that, it really bothered me, or comments like that, or DMs like that, it really bothered me because I was like, how dare they? And then I also wanted to like re-engage with them and be like, tell them how I feel. I'm like, well, that would make no sense. I'm talking to someone who clearly is like not in the right state of mind. There's nothing I can say back. So it used to really, really bother me.
Yeah.
And then I remember Lovey.
Oh, yes.
So I went to a book event for Lovey.
Okay.
And someone was interviewing her.
Yep.
And someone was asking her just like about some negative comments she gets. And she said something to me that really stuck with me. And she's like, if I listened to all the comments and all the naysayers, I just would stop doing the work I'm doing. She's like, so I just have to decide to either not read them and not look at the comments. And if I do, I really have to just choose to let it go.
Yeah.
Because that just also means that like if there's no one upset, I'm probably not saying anything that's worthwhile. And I was like, oh, she's right. So I'm just gonna have to let it go. Like, don't get me wrong, I still get like infuriated in the moment.
Yeah.
But I've gotten so much better just like, okay, that's just this person. And especially like DMs now. I'm so good with DMs because I'm just like delete. I'm not even gonna take my time to read it. I'm not giving you any space. I'm just, no, we're not having this conversation today.
Yeah.
Was there an increase of that? Like with the book?
I don't know if there's I'm just so used to it now.
A little
I'm just so
desensitized
used to it.
from
I feel like I'm probably just
Yeah.
desensitized. I mean, but like sometimes things just throw me because it's also like with the internet, people just don't read sometimes. I'm like, if you just read what I actually said, we wouldn't be having this conversation. So, for example, last week I got like a bunch of DMs from people that were upset because I wrote an article for Pop Sugar talking about Ozempic craze. But I was very specific in the article talking about using Ozempic for weight loss, not for medical related reasons. And people are like, Ozempic has changed my life and for my diabetes. I'm like, I didn't say there's anything wrong with
That's
that.
what it's
Like,
intended
that's
for.
literally, I'm sure it has, because that is what it's
Aw.
intended for. But like, if y'all would just read the article,
Yeah.
you would understand that's not what I said. So I think people take these buzzwords and they just don't take the time to, and then they just like want to come and tell you about it. And I'm like, I'm not going to do this with y'all today.
Yeah.
I think, how do you maintain like the humanity? Because I think people don't see you as such, right?
Yeah,
They just are
sometimes,
like, this is mouth that's saying these like
Yeah.
things that are agitating to them or controversial. But
Mhm.
like, how do you, I guess, maintain your own humanity in that?
Well, yes, I get a fair amount of like comments like that, but then I get so many like heartwarming, like bring me to tears DMs and messages that like that's what makes me thrive. And like that stuff, I'm like, who cares? But it's like the messages of people like really sharing how it's impacted them or how they feel so seen or understood, or how it's like been life-changing for them. I'm like, oh, this is why I do the thing I do.
Yeah.
Mhm.
The note from your friend in the book was like beautiful.
I know.
I was
I have
almost
the
like,
best
Oh,
you're not supposed to
friend in the world.
compare, but I was like,
The best friend in the
why
world.
are my friends sending me?
Honestly, though,
But
my friend is the
honestly,
sweetest person. Like, I'm like,
yeah.
she's just a gem. Like, you
Yeah.
don't, I just feel like people, there's just not that many people like her that
Yeah.
exist in the
Yeah.
world. She's
Yeah.
such a gem. And I didn't know she was going to do that. Like, it was for her podcast. And she's like, come on my podcast. I'm like, what are we talking about? She's like, don't worry about it. I'm like, this is weird. What do you mean? And then she just like read it to me live. And it was the sweetest thing ever.
Yeah.
So beautiful.
Yeah. I think that's one of the parts of the book that really like warmed my heart.
Yeah.
I think also hearing about like just your relationships in general. I think, you know, you touched on now being single, but I know you still have a healthy relationship with your ex-husband, which
absolutely.
is beautiful to see.
Yeah.
It's so rarely talked about. Like
Yes.
people talk about divorce being tumultuous and like, you know, wreaking havoc, but like I love the way you talk about your ex. Like I love the way that you know, highlight that you guys had a healthy relationship and then it just wasn't working. And like you had to go your separate ways, but you still like talk to each other. You still visit each other's families. That's beautiful.
It's such a rare thing though, because I talk to people and they're like, what? Like, you're friends with your ex-husband? I'm like, yeah, he's great. I love him. He's so amazing.
Yeah.
But I do think it's such a gift to be able to have like such a healthy relationship and then have a healthy ending and to still like be able to be in each other's lives. And like he was teaching my nephew to drive a couple weeks ago. Like it's such a sweet thing. And so yeah, it's really lovely.
Yeah.
And I
Now-
feel very blessed to have that
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah. That's good stuff. Now, you talked a little bit in the book about your mom. And it's funny because I didn't know that I saw your mom walking down the street with you in Brooklyn. So I was at Joel's.
Okay.
And Joel and me and his daughters are like playing. And then like we're sitting like in his little like dining room area. And we just see like Chrissy walking by. And so he opens the window. He's like, Chrissy.
Which happens like all the time. Like all the time. He's like, Chris, I'm like, hi.
But I also was like, oh my gosh, it's Chrissy. And I don't think she like
I
you
didn't
didn't
know
know
at
it was
time.
me,
No.
right?
I knew it was Joelle, but I was like, that doesn't look like Bria, but maybe who is that?
But we were just yelling out the window at you.
Yeah.
But you have a beautiful relationship with your mom.
Yeah.
And like, I just wanted you to like share a little bit about like your relationship with her. And like, I know that you talked about that she didn't really know everything you were going through in the book.
No, I do have a beautiful relationship with my mom. And like when you saw her that day, it was like book launch week. So my family came out and it was like so great to have them there. It was like so special. But yeah, I didn't give my mom an advance copy of the book. And in hindsight, I don't even know why I didn't. I just I didn't. I don't know. I'm like, she can read it when the book comes out. I'm not sure. But so she started recently reading it, like this week. And I actually had to ask her, I was like, hey, Mom, did you start reading the book? Because I know she's like so proud of me. Like she's been telling all her friends, like and she was just so excited at the event. Like I know she's like supports me and she's so proud of me. But she had yet to mention anything about the book. So I was like, hey, Mom, did you start reading the book? And she's like, yeah, I did. I had to put it down. It made me a little sad. And I was like, oh, Mom, why? And she's like, I just didn't know you were going through so much. Like, I didn't know you were having the experiences. And like, was I not in tune as a mom? And I was like, no, I didn't tell anybody. Like, you know, there's no way you could have predicted that or known that.
Yeah.
And I think I've always just, I mean, it's a result of trauma, of course, but I've always just been like, I can handle this myself. I don't, even as a kid, I'm like, I don't need, what's my mom going to do about it? Like, these are just things that are happening.
Yeah.
And so I've just always like kept a lot of those things in. And so I was like, I don't want you to feel bad about it. Like that's how I handled it. And there's nothing that you could have done differently to make the situations be different. But I don't want you to be sad reading it. I'm like, I'm great. I'm wonderful. Like, it turned amazing. It turned out great. Like, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
But it's so interesting because when you're talking about life stories and childhood experiences, like it does affect the people that are in your life as well. Like you're telling it through your perspective, but like everybody is also in some ways affected by it.
Yeah.
So for I intend to write another book, and I'm like, I'm gonna just like prepare my mom in advance next time because we're gonna go deeper. And so if this was like
we're ready
making her sensitive, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna prep her. I'm gonna get you ready for this next.
Yes.
In writing the book, did you have like deeper conversations like with your mom, like just kind of like about her growing up, or like even your grandmother and what their experiences were like?
Actually, no, and I don't know why I didn't. Actually, that's like a really great question. I will say that like topics I know I want to delve into in my next book. I even before I knew necessarily, there were things that came up in my mind and questions. I definitely started asking my mom things about other family dynamics. But in relation to this book, I really never, my parents are from the Deep South. You know, I know basically their experiences. And they moved to Wisconsin. I'm from Wisconsin. I don't know why they chose Wisconsin. I'm like, y'all went from Arkansas to Wisconsin. I don't really understand. And I think that, I don't know, like my parents just did not talk about race dynamics with us, even though obviously they had their own experiences. It just wasn't something that they like really prepped us for outside of the home, and I'm not really sure why. So that's the question I need to ask my mom about, actually.
I've been doing that. There's this like workbook that about my own self, but I was like, let me ask my mom these questions. And I'm like interested in like what your responses are. Like, what was your relationship to your primary caregiver?
Yeah.
Was it mom or dad? Like, who was it? Who did you think it was? And she said aunt, and I was like, whoa! I didn't think that was a thing. So it's interesting now when we're at this age, these big ages.
Yes.
Right. And we get to like ask these questions and just have like a more expansive version on who we think mom and like dad are.
One thing I will say about my mom is that she does not like to revisit things that are like difficult or sensitive. And so she can be very aloof when you start talking about like just like childhood trauma that occurred. She doesn't really like to go there too much. And so I think that's one reason, probably one of the reasons I didn't like go maybe into too much detail asking her questions, and definitely something I need to consider for the next book, because I know I could casually mention to my mom once that I was in therapy, and she's like, why are you in therapy? Did I do something wrong? And I was like, everybody's done something wrong. Like, right? All of our parents have done something wring. And so she gets very sensitive, and there's like lots of and I recognize a lot of herself in me, actually, now that I've started going therapy, because there's these things I put in boxes, and I'm like, we're just gonna leave that there. We don't need to touch that. And she's very much like that.
So much of that resonates with me so deeply, just even in the dynamic that I have with my mom, and how there are so many things that are like tucked under the rug, or like you said, put in little boxes, and we're gonna like put that in the corner. We don't have to deal with it. I think, you know, in terms of that actually informed a lot of my experience in terms of like race dynamics, and like the things that that my parents didn't share with me and didn't talk about with me. Like there were still going to be lessons that I was going to have to learn about them, but I was going to have to learn them on my own. And like that was really, I mean, maybe could have been a little easier. I don't know. But like I remember it being very hard. Like that was a hard thing for me to like ingest and like deal with, especially growing up. And I want to talk a little bit more about that. But we're going to take a little brief pause, a little hold for a little commercial break, and then we'll be back. Hey, beautiful people. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode. I just wanted to take a moment to shout out one of my amazing friends, Tochi. She came up with this incredible deck of cards. Now, this is not an ad, but an act of love in support of another beautiful Black business owner. So
Yes. So Tochi is an accountability coach, and so she's really rooted in supporting people that are looking for alignment with their well-being and self-growth. And so these cards are a daily way for you to uplift, be inspired, and just really check in with yourself. And so we're so excited that in 2021, Tochi decided to take the leap and create this beautiful deck so you can find out what today's word is. And so we're going to give you a little taste.
Yep.
But they might have to...
Oh, I think they're going to have to buy the cards to get a taste.
You got to purchase it, y'all.
We're leaving the website in the caption. We hope that you love them just as much as we do. 31 cards of today's word. And today's word is, well, you're just going to have to find out by making a purchase.
Welcome back, everybody. We are here with Chrissy King.
Yes.
How you feeling?
I'm having the best time. I could stay here and talk with y'all all night.
But my thoughts, too, were really like, Serena receives so much more flack. Yes, she's a Black woman. Yes, the way she's built, but also because of colorism.
Oh,
like it's like if
100%.
she was like lighter and curly, like she
Different
would still
experience.
receive, but it would be softer in in their approach to it.
Yes.
It's like the way that she comes about and the skin tone with it. And so,
Yeah.
I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
I 100% agree, and I feel like the colorism conversation is a conversation we need to have a lot more.
Yeah.
Because it is definitely because of not just she's a Black woman, but if she presented differently, if she was light skinned, if she had curly hair, if she looked differently, it would also be 100%. Like the comments about saying that she looks like an ape, like she would not be getting those comments if she was a light skinned Black woman. Like it just wouldn't happen.
Yeah.
Now this is like a completely different conversation, but I watched The Real Housewives of Potomac. I don't know if
my friends are obsessed.
I have so many friends that love that.
I like Potomac, y'all. But really interesting though, Potomac's all Black women, right? So you can see the colorism happening on the show. And like the reunion show, they had a conversation on colorism, and even within the group, like you can see like the lighter skinned women don't see the way that they are just treated so differently for the same actions, right?
Yeah.
And just and even the way they judge each other for the same actions. So 100% the fact that she's a dark skinned Black woman plays an impact, plays a role in the way that she's talked about as well.
Yeah.
I always feel like in wellness, that's the piece where, I mean, it's being talked about, but just like there's not a lot of voices that are like really like speaking from that perspective. And it's like that's a whole nother, when we talk about like identities and the intersections,
absolutely,
it's like that's a major one, because although we're in these we're making spaces and we're like, yes, be more diverse and be more inclusive, but in that it's like there becomes a face for what that looks like. Yeah. And it's like
especially in the wellness space, right?
Oh,
token person for like the face of Black women.
Well, like the crazy part, Chrissy, is like I think we talked about that a little bit on the podcast. I am her. Like I am that tokenized version. And I think like also like not just reading your book, but like several times in my fitness journey, I found myself checking my privilege, because I'm like, I'm privileged to be in this position, but I'm looking at some of like, you know, my Black brothers and sisters that are like not getting the opportunities. I'm like, there's room for more than one of us. Why is it always I step in the space and I don't see anybody else that looks like me? And I'm constantly the choice. And I found that being even more when you talked about like you made like the most money during the pandemic. I also did too.
Right?
Because I was that girl.
You're the one. We found her.
We found her. She's it. But like for me, what I noticed was it was because I was a safe choice.
And this is one of the things I talk about in the book. Like you can be oppressed and privileged. You can hold both things at the same time. But this is also why the colorism conversation, I feel like we need to be having more of. But like also we all have to come to the table saying, as Black people, yes, we are all oppressed, and some of us are more privileged than others. And like that's the reality of it. And we have to be able to like openly acknowledge that. And like, you know, I don't know if I get into this in the book. I don't think I do. But like also there's just like the real reality of like pretty privilege, right? When you look a certain
desirability,
right? That all these things play a role in the choices that people make and opportunities that we get. And so we always have to be considering all of those factors.
It's like those little subcategories in intersectionality.
Absolutely.
Because you're like, you go Black woman, but then you go light-skinned Black woman. You're a light-skinned fit Black woman. Like, you know what I mean? So like,
even the hair texture within being a Black
texturism.
Because you can still be light-skinned, but maybe you do have a 4C texture. Like the way you're going to be treated is going to be, it's going to be different still. And that's why I love, like, just in your book, like you really like the emphasis was like, notice the intersections and where you intersect.
Yeah.
Because the experience is so different.
Yeah.
And then I just always challenge people too to be like, okay, if I'm feeling oppressed and I'm having this experience, what is someone else with more intersecting identities? Like, what is their experience like then, right? And just always taking it beyond yourself because there's so many layers to it. Yeah.
And that's where I think the take space versus like, I'm saying like share space.
Yes.
Like comes into play because if you do have that privilege, it's like, oh, okay, cool. Like, you know, I've gotten these bags here. I've had this platform here, but like, this might be a time that I could be like, yo, I know somebody. Let me tap this person. Because they'd be a better voice or a better face, you know, to represent what we're trying to do. Especially when you talk to like brands and companies. It's like, they're just looking at like the quota that they need to fill. And it's like, insert like Black woman in wellness here.
And as Deja was saying, it's like, then you become the person, right? So every company's like, oh, I know someone.
Right.
It's this person. Just call them again. They're great.
I wonder how many times behind closed doors where somebody was like, I know someone, and they like already know they're about to say my name in the room. I'm like,
right.
But you know, like also I think the pandemic was great for me too because it gave me a space to then put my people on. So then I was able, like, when somebody would be like, oh yeah, we'd like 4 of you. And I was like, great.
I got them.
Because I got them. Right here. Like, you know? So like, I'm also thankful for, you know, that time because of that too.
Yeah. Absolutely. That was a great question.
Yeah, it was.
We didn't get to that, but because
listen, it's going to the episode now.
So much though, but I was like, well, I wanted to ask about your father. And just kind of like how that relationship affected like your view on yourself, your body image, and just how that poured into like dating.
Yeah. So I always say that I don't feel like my relationship with either my parents, my mom or dad, really had a effect necessarily on body image. I felt like my messaging about bodies was coming from like outside. However, my relationship with my father definitely had an impact on my dating choices. And I think that now my ex-husband, I always say he was an angel. He is an angel, not was. He is an angel. So like this does not apply to him. And I always like to preface that. I don't want anybody thinking that what I'm about to say applies to him because he's great. However, I would say outside of him, I found that and I've unpacked this since I've been going to therapy, that so many of my dating choices really are a result of like the relationship I have with my father and like this desire to try to like win his affection and win his desire because my dad just like wasn't present in a lot of ways because he had his own things that he was dealing with. And so it's like if I can be like the perfect person, I can be the perfect student, if I can overexcel, like I can win this person's love and affection. And I've definitely seen that translate into dating choices. So like therapy has really helped me unpack that because that is not the way that I want to be operating and dating. And also like dating people who I'm like, oh, I can save this person. I can help this person. Right. And then as I've stepped back, I'm like, oh, I can see so much of my father in this person. And this is not in the positive way. And so really unpacking that in therapy has been like really hard work, but also like really powerful to see. And so that I can make better choices and more informed choices. And like really heal some of those wounds so that I'm not dating from that place of hurt.
That's good.
That's awareness.
Oh, yeah.
And that resonates with me so, like, that resonates with me super strong. Like, I think, you know, in a lot of ways, my dad was doing the best that he can and could and still can. I'm unpacking a lot of that in therapy, years and years of therapy. But that informed so many of my dating choices too. And I look back at like my exes. I will not say my husband, my lovely husband, also is an angel. But the men that I dated prior, so much of my dad in each and every one of them. And I think I also was like, I want to be the savior or the fixer. So like all the things that you went down, I was like, ooh, me, seen, awesome. You know, in terms of like talking about like diet culture, we went there. But like you talked about also in relation to after you lost your dad and you had just gotten 2 weeks prior out of a marriage. And then you go back to diet culture. Why?
Because like I think the thing is diet culture, even though you know how harmful it still feels like a safe place. It feels like home if you've been sitting in that place for a really long time. And so for me, I'm like, okay, I've just left this long-term partnership that I was married to for 11 years, with for 14 years. Then my dad passes away unexpectedly 2 weeks later. I'm like feeling so out of control, so out of sorts. And I'm like, but the one thing I can control is my body, right? And so it just seems like, oh, this is the thing I'm going to fixate on because I can't really, I'm dealing with all this grief and so many different, like big griefs, right? At the same time, I don't really know how to like navigate it all, but I'm like, but I can control. I know how to count calories. I know how to exercise. I know how to control my body. And I think that for a lot of us, we don't recognize that sometimes, but like dieting is the low hanging fruit when everything else feels out of control. And especially when it's big things that we're like, I'm not really ready to deal with that right now. But this one thing I can control. I can control how I look. And then also when I control how I look and I shrink my body and make myself smaller, then I get external validation from people. So that also is like a feel good thing, right? And I'm like, oh, this is the thing I'm going to fixate and worry and like, take my energy and attention, like focusing on. And I think that so many of us do that for a long time. And I will honestly say that after like I started healing my relationship with body image and like breaking up with diet culture, this is also when I started addressing these other things, right? Like, and I'm not saying that I stayed with my husband, my ex, because of diet culture, but I will say that when I started breaking up with that like toxic relationship and like really started working on so many other things, I'm like, okay, so what are the things that are actually bothering me in my life? What are the things that are really unsettled? Because it's not the body, that's the thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I left my corporate job, then I left my partnership, and then I moved across the country. Like all these things happened. I was like, oh, because I was really like, I was focusing on my body as the thing versus like, what are the real feelings I'm having? And I think a lot of us do that in our lives.
Yeah. That's the unveiling.
Yes, it's the unveiling.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
It reminds me of in the book you mentioned that retreat you went to.
Yeah.
And you had that like really deep meditation.
Yeah.
Yeah, the future you,
Oh my
right?
gosh, it's so wild.
Gain clarity. And it's kind of how does that feel to be sitting in what was
It's
once
so
in your mind?
wild.
Yeah.
So in the book, I talk about the story. I came to Bed-Stuy actually for the first time, and was this 2018. And my best friend now was having, and it's like the first time we spent a weekend together because we knew each other from Instagram. And so she posted that she's doing this event, and I was like, I'm gonna come out. And she's like, are you for real? I'm like, yeah. And she's like, stay with me. I'm like, great. So I came out here, I stayed with her, and she did this like, she's a wonderful life coach. She did this future you visualization. And it was like, I'm not really like at the time, I wasn't like into meditation or visualization, but like, it was like 20 minutes, and I like literally fell into like the deepest meditation / visualization. And I woke up, and I was like, that was the weirdest thing in my life because it felt so real. But in the meditation, the visualization, I was single, living in New York, and I was writing books for a living. And I had, like, in my visualization, I had written, like, my second or third. It wasn't my first one. And I was like, wow, this is so weird because this is not my life at all. I wasn't even thinking about being a writer then. Like, I was in fitness. So I was like, this is weird. I'm like, all right, I got to put that back somewhere else because that doesn't make any sense. And so to now, like that was in April. I hope I'm getting my years right because it was in April. It was either April 2018 or April 2019, one of the two. But then my book came out. Literally, it was like either 4 years after, like the month almost. And literally, I'm living in Brooklyn. I'm single, and I just wrote my first book, and it was like mind blowing. Like I still get chills when I think about it.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just really, really well. So now when I think about the story, I'm like, okay, was it a future you visualization, or then I manifest what I had in the? I don't even know which one is which. But yeah.
Did you write it down?
I did.
Okay.
Yeah, I did.
And you shared it with Shrin.
I did.
So
I
you
told
like
her about
said it out
then.
loud,
I
and
told
then
her
you
about
wrote it
then,
down.
And she's like, wow, that's so weird. I'm like, I know, right?
Yeah.
And like we didn't know each other that well then, but I was like, I have to share this with you. It was like so deep and so like it felt so real. So yeah, to be here now, I'm like, wow.
I always like the statement when people say write it down and make it real.
Yeah.
Like, because
It's
sometimes
so
we get
true.
these thoughts and these dreams, and it's just
so
like,
true.
I don't know, we treat it like very cavalierly, like, oh, it's just a daydream.
No,
But you,
so true.
even if you didn't want to acknowledge it, like the part of you believed it.
Yeah.
Sounds like.
No, for sure.
Okay.
And so here's another like trippy thing is 2020, like the pandemic was just getting started, right? I had like been in New York for like 5 or 6 months. I had been working when I moved here to like very part-time at this nonprofit. And then like we weren't doing anything. And I was like, y'all just stop paying me. Like I'll figure it out. I'll make it work. And so I have a lot of time in my hands. So I was like reading this book, and I can't even remember what it was now, but in the book it talked about like an order to the universe, like this concept of like write down something you want, because like when you go to a restaurant and you write down, you tell the waitress or waiter your order, you don't like keep asking them every 5 minutes, like, where's my food? You trust that it's coming back.
Yeah.
Because like you put your order in.
Yeah.
And they were like, the universe works the same way. Like make an order to the universe. And I was like, okay. So I put 3 things on the list. I can't remember what the third one is, and I need to go back and look if the third one came true. But the first 2, one of them was I wanted to get a book deal. Because at the time I was like, I think I want to write a book. And literally that was on my list. And the other thing was like, it was a large sum of money. And I said that I wanted to get it like in like 90 days, which made like it wasn't possible. Like it didn't make sense. Y'all, let me just tell you something. Less than 3 months later, I made double the money that I asked for.
Whoa.
And it was just how weird it was. I was like at my house, again, doing nothing.
Yeah.
And I went up to the rooftop of the building I was living at the time. And I was just like sitting there enjoying the weather. And I just got this intuitive hit to do like a webinar. And this was like right after George Floyd.
Okay.
And I had been doing webinars on like anti-racism stuff prior to that, but I just got like, oh, I think I should do it again.
Yeah.
So I remember I went on Instagram. I was like, hey, I'm thinking about doing this course again with people interested. And all these people were like, oh my God, do it. And I was like, okay. So did the course, and I'm thinking like, oh, maybe like 50 people or 100 people will sign up. Literally thousands of people signed up. And I was like, what? That was so
I know someone who took your course.
Yeah. And I was like, what? That was like, no, like very, like I just literally posted on Instagram. That was it. Yeah. So that happens. I was like, wow, that blows my mind. Then a few months later, I wrote an article for Shape that like kind of went viral, and it was about like what's it like to be a body positive Black trainer. And I really just like interviewed other trainers. It wasn't even really about me. Yeah. Article goes viral. The Today Show was like, hey, do you want to come on and talk about it? I was like, yeah, of course. So I did. And long story short, like someone seeing me on that show led to a publisher reaching out to write a book. And I didn't end up taking that publishing deal. It wasn't the right deal. But like then I got an agent just like that. And then 3-4 months later, I end up having the book deal. And so I'm like, when you say write it down, like
and make it
real, like literally, like I feel like it's like so serious, like it really works. So,
well,
like,
you said that in the book. Your friends are like, you are like a manifesting mommy over here.
Because you know what it is, like I've really mastered the detachment of it. Like I say that I want the thing, I'm like it's gonna work out. I didn't like, oh, how am I gonna get a book deal? I didn't fixate it. I'm like, I put the order in. The universe gonna figure out the rest.
Yes,
and I really just detach from it, and when it happens, it's gonna happen in the right time.
That almost brings me back to like that concept of the being versus the doing.
Yeah. Yes.
Right. And like the doing is when we won't trust as much. There's like, how do I like maneuver?
How do I make it happen?
Finagle it a little bit. Let me just help the universe.
Yeah.
Right? A little bit of assistance, guy. Just a little bit, right? But you're like, I'm really gonna write it down. I put the order in, so it must be coming.
Yeah.
Like if it's taking longer, it just must be really good and really you're putting extra love into it.
Yeah. Yes.
But
extra seasoning on it.
Challenging to connect with.
It's very challenging.
Yeah.
That is it's challenging, right? But then I also always remind myself that it's also easier to just sit back and let it happen, right? Because the way it's gonna happen is always something I could never have like figured those things out myself. Yeah. But it is the challenging part because you're like, and I do believe though that you can work your way to things too. Don't get me wrong. You can 100% be like, I'm going to go out there and do it and make it happen, and it will happen. Yeah. But it is easier if you can just be like, I'm going to wait for it to happen. It's going to happen in the right time.
When people talk about like the divine feminine versus the masculine energy, like what you just said is like, that is like the epitome of like sitting in. Yeah. It's like, I'm going to let it come.
Yeah.
I create.
Yeah, it is. But I even have to remind myself of that sometimes because I still will find myself, like every once in a while, I'll be like, and I'm like, girl, you already know, like, chill.
You got receipts for it.
Right? Like, relax. So it is definitely like a work to always come back, a practice to always come back to be like, okay, I'm just going to be,
That's beautiful though, Chrissy, because I feel like you are now living proof of relinquishing that control.
Yeah.
And even your transformation of like letting go of diet culture and really just being in the body that you're in and loving the body that you have and like being that vessel of magic that you are. I think that also goes back to like the doing versus the being.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I love that you said that, and I had like a completely different visual as you were saying it. And I was like, oh yeah, that's good. And I was like, and then I'm also thinking of it as like you're doing in diet culture, like constantly, but now you're just being and showing up as this beautiful light in the world. And it's like,
well, that was so beautiful what you just said. I never even thought about it like that though, right? Because it is, diet culture is like, do, exercise, count the calories, do the thing, keep going. And then like, liberation is like, I'm going to let my body be. I'm going to do what feels good. I'm going to be at peace with myself. That's beautiful. Yeah. I love that. Yeah, that was amazing.
Honestly, okay, so I was triggered by so many things in the book.
So many.
So many things. And triggered in a good way because it was, like I said to you, like, especially in those moments of like principle to practice, like there was so many like thought-provoking things where like I just sat with my thoughts on things. And one of the things that was super triggering as it relates to diet culture was the macros for me.
Yeah.
And I remember when I first got into the fitness industry and I was actually doing this gig for Reebok at the time. And I remember everybody on the gig was counting macros and I didn't know what macros were.
Oh, no.
I was actually a dancer hired because of my physique to be a part of this. So I wasn't like fully immersed in like the fitness wellness world yet. I wasn't a trainer yet. I was still dancing and got hired for this job. And I remember like people coming downstairs, like we were staying, because we booked the job and then it was like out of LA. And we were staying in this hotel. People come downstairs with these little scales and like stuff in like plastic baggies. No, Alicia, it was like, honestly, it was like terrifying for me. Weighing their food.
Oh, I used to do that, y'all. Like I had a travel scale.
Chrissy, like how?
It's terrifying.
Can we talk about that
Yeah.
story?
Yeah,
We were talking
please.
About it was not offline, so it wasn't in the book, y'all. But in another interview, you spoke about, and you were married at the time.
Yeah.
Okay, so you were married at the time. The family was going to this like theme park.
Yeah, my worst nightmare.
Okay.
Because it was away from like where we live for the weekend.
Yeah.
And so you meal prep, like you were like dedicated to the meal prep.
I packed as many meals in a cooler that I could for the weekend because, like Deja said, I was like, oh, no, I have to know exactly what I'm consuming at all times. And same thing, like I take a scale with me, right? I would measure out my protein. I want to be like exact. Like I want to make sure everything is exactly, because that's how I know I can control my body, because I know exactly what I'm putting into it. And so the thought of being somewhere for a whole weekend, just like, you know, these people you're talking about, like that's terrifying because I don't know exactly. And you think about that in hindsight, it sounds wild because like it's one weekend. Like how much is your body going to change? In
Right.
right? But I was like, no, this is bad. And I remember I was like dreading the weekend because I was like, oh, I have to do this thing. I don't want to do it. So I'm just going to take all the food I can possibly take with. And the thing about like when you're like really in a negative relationship with like your body image is like, I was also in the thinnest body I'd ever been at this time in my life, right? Like I had never been thinner, like getting constant validation from people, but like it didn't matter what other people said is how I felt. And I felt like I wasn't thin enough still. And so, it was like I had to measure everything, bring all my food with me. And so this particular day, this is like what I call my rock bottom, when I was like, okay, this is like, I was having a miserable time the whole day because it's like one of the things about diet culture too, is like, when you're so fixated on your body, like you're not really present. Cause I kept thinking about like, do I look okay? Do people think am I trying to suck my stomach? And like just so hyper conscious of how I looked.
Yeah.
And so I remember we like took a like break for lunch, whatever, and we go to the restaurant to eat. And I like had this little Tupperware container that been sitting in the car in the cooler. And I remember it was like a wrap. It was like so sad and pathetic. It was like the saddest meal ever. And so everyone was going in and I stayed in the car. And then my partner's family was like, why isn't she coming in? And he's like, oh, she just wants to be healthy, you know. So she brought her own food. Very supportive. But I know they were like, this girl.
Right.
So they were so nice. They asked the restaurant if I could bring my food in, and the restaurant obliged. But like it took me like 5 minutes to eat a wrap. It was like cold and sad. And so then I'm just sitting at the table and everyone's just ordering whatever they want to eat, and the food's coming out and it smells so good. And I'm just like looking around the table and I'm just saying everybody enjoy themselves. And I'm like, this is so miserable, right? Like I'm going to spend the rest of my life having experiences like this if I don't change something. And it's like when you think about the wellness industry, like, oh, it's supposed to make us feel well, right? But like diet culture, like I had a worse relationship with exercise. I had a worse relationship with food. I had a worse relationship with body image, right? Like none of the things that I thought being in my like dream body was going to fix, like none of those things were fixed. I was just like in a worse place than I started with.
It almost sounds like you're like at war with yourself.
100% at war. 100% at war with myself. And so when I talk about body liberation, one of the things I say in the book is like, body liberation is like so many things, but one of it is like understanding the systems that would have us at war with ourselves. Because it's literally like you're at war with yourself.
Yeah.
How did that affect your relationship with your then partner?
Oh, he was I say he's an angel because I really mean that. Like he was just very supportive. Like he never was like, what are you doing? This is wild.
My family is looking at us right now.
What are you doing?
Yeah.
No, I was so like, y'all, I was so in it. Like people knew, my family, my partner, like, don't ask me to do something that's going to interfere with my gym schedule, because if
Mhm.
I can't go to the gym, I can't go to the event, like, period. So it'd be like things to the point of like, I remember this one time my nephew had like a Christmas program, and I'm like, I have to go to this Christmas program, but like, how am I going to go to the Christmas program and go to gym? So then I started doing this thing where I would like have doctor's appointments during the day, and I'd take sick leave from work.
Yeah.
If I had to, though, so that I could like get my workout in during the day and then do the obligations I had at night if I had them.
You were committed.
I was
like, you
so
were very
in it, y'all. I was
Yes.
so far
Yes.
in it. And so, yeah, he knew. And I was working out a lot. Like,
Yeah.
I was like 2 to 3 hours in the gym, 6 days a week. So it was like, he just was like, okay, she's going to do her gym thing. And then like,
Yeah.
and then I'm meal prepping and I'm eating and I'm very specific about what I'm eating. And yeah, it was just, he was just like, this is what she does. She's healthy.
Yeah.
She's healthy.
And at the time, did you actually think you were happy?
There were times when I did.
Yeah.
And also I was like very much immersed. I trained at like a powerlifting gym.
Okay.
And the culture of the gym was very much like I was in line with the culture of the gym, right? So everyone was meal prepping, everyone was counting their macros, everyone was working out for hours. So I felt like, yeah, this is like the normal thing to do.
Yeah.
And then to make matters worse, like people would come into the gym and they'd be like, oh, I want to look like her. Like, what's her workout? I'm seeing
Your physique.
me.
Like when you talked about in the elevator, opening
So
the
I'm
jar,
like,
and
yeah, right. So there's
Yeah.
a part of me that was like, really, I'm like, yeah, she wants to look like me, like, yeah.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, well, this is also like my life. Like, honestly, this is like all of my mental energy and capacity is going to this.
Yeah.
Which is also why I say, like, when we really like break it with diet culture and heal that relationship with body image, it frees up so much mental energy because it's like draining.
Yeah.
For your entire life to be focused on what you're eating, how you're gonna work out, and like what does the scale say and what do you look like? Like there is no energy left over for anything.
Yeah.
And so I often say, like, if I hadn't have got, I would never have written a book. I could have never done any of the things I'm doing right now because I didn't have any energy left over to do anything else. And also that's why I say like diet culture is like so much a tool of white supremacy and the patriarchy because it keeps us distracted. Like how are we gonna worry about anything else going on when all of your energy is going to like trying to think about how this vessel looks like?
Yeah. I love that in the book, you give us tangible things to get to that place of body liberation. Because honestly, for me, like it was huge education piece when you really, in the beginning of the book, broke down body positivity, body neutrality, and body liberation. And for me, I didn't really separate all three. I was like, oh yeah, we would be inclusive, you know? Like, and I think a lot of people probably sit in that same space, but just like this idea of like getting to a place where you genuinely love yourself no matter what is happening, no matter what flaws, you know, you may see when you look in the mirror, like that's not an easy place to get to. And I love that in the book, you actually acknowledge like, this is not an overnight process, you know, and like self-love is like that Band-Aid that we put on, you know what I mean? And like this, and we can find ourselves living in that toxic nature because it is so much easier to just say, you just got to love yourself. You know?
Love yourself. It fixes everything.
Yeah.
And I think it's so important. One of the reasons I really want to talk about that because like, you know, mainstream body positivity, right? It's like this hyper focus on just like loving your body and like, and again, like I talk in the book, I want us all to love ourselves. Like I think it's very important. But number one, depending on our identities, that's harder for some of us than others to even get to that place. When you live in a society that tells you fundamentally things about how you exist, the body you exist in is wrong, it's very challenging to get to a place of self-love anyways. But let's even say that you do and you like, I just love everything about myself. I'm so in love with myself. That also self-love piece does not protect you from experiencing harm in the world. And so if we're stopping the conversation at self-love, like, no, self-love is important, but that's not gonna solve the issue.
Yeah.
And we have to take it further to like, how are we dismantling these systems that's making it difficult for all of us to even get to that place of love and to love ourselves and to exist free of harm.
Yeah.
And then I think this hyper focus on self-love also puts the onus on the individual, right?
Yeah.
Like,
because it's all on you. You need to
love yourself more, and then you'll be okay. And it's like, no. The systems are the problem. I'm not the problem. Right. Yeah.
I even love that there was this talk about almost like the focus is still in the body when you're looking at it from those respects, as opposed to just like, do I like mentally feel stronger?
Yes.
Do I emotionally like feel healthy?
Yeah.
Like making that kind of like your guiding light as opposed to like anything, anything that the vessel is kind of like offering.
Absolutely. Because that's what, and when I talk about self-love, the chapter on self-love in the book, I'm also like, I'm not talking about just like this thing. I'm talking about the essence of who you are, right? Because again, we could this thing is going to change. It's going to keep changing. It's like, I would say it's the vessel that allows us to have this human experience. It's the vessel that's allowing us to fulfill our soul's purpose. It's not who we are. And this vessel is going to keep changing. So it's like, it's got to be so much more than just that.
Yeah.
I heard a lot of like self-compassion pieces. Is that like a lot of the work that you've done personally?
Yeah.
Like a lot of self-compassion?
All the time, every day. And I think it's so important because it's like, as Deja was already saying, like, I'm really clear that this is really hard. You know what I'm saying? It's like a journey. It's very nuanced. It's very challenging. There's so many moving pieces. I talk about the fact that, like, again, if you have multiple intersecting identities that are marginalized, weight loss might feel like the one access to privilege you have. It might feel like the one thing that will make it easy to exist in the world. And we can't ignore the realities like of discrimination for people in larger bodies. So it's like all of these things are true. And so it's so when we're divesting from diet culture, when we're unlearning and we're also having these experiences in the world that you can wake up on any given day and feel like different about the vessel that you exist in. And so that self-compassion piece is so important because it's like, no matter how I feel today, no matter what I'm struggling with, the thing I know I deserve is self-compassion because I can acknowledge that this is really hard and I'm doing the best I can today, you know, and that's the best I can do for myself. And I just think the self-compassion piece is so important for all of us in all of our lives. Like so many of us, we are so compassionate to the people around us, right? Our friends, our partners, our children. We're like, we would never say some of the things that we say to ourselves to other people because we would not have any friends if we said that, right? But then we'll do it to ourselves. And it's like, no, I am the person that I'm in relationship with more than I feel like my relationship with myself is more important than any other relationship because I'm with myself every single moment of every single day. And so it's like, how am I nourishing that relationship with myself just like I'm nourishing that relationship with other people? And that compassion piece is so important.
I love the I think we were talking about this, that like depiction you gave in the book where it was talking about the root system, right? And so when you're just talking about like nourishing yourself, and then that allows you, right, to be able to do that like with the communities and the people that you're in relationship with. And so that's like that visual for me was just like, oh, like I get it, but it was like, oh, I get it.
We're all interconnected, right? And that's why
look individually,
we
but like
look
underneath of the surface, we're all connected.
We're all regardless if we want to acknowledge or not, we're all connected, right? And that's why the collective liberation piece is so important for me because it's like there is no liberation without collective liberation, right? Because we don't exist in vacuums. We are all bound in each other, regardless if we accept it or not.
Yeah. Well, listen, speaking of that interconnectivity and that nourishment that we feel you even pouring into this conversation, like, I feel like that's like the perfect place to be like, let's tie a sweet little bow on it.
I love it.
Honestly, Chrissy, you are a phenomenal female force. You are a manifesting mommy, as Alicia said.
I like it.
You are a book baddie now.
You got both of those.
I mean, and we have to close by saying, like, by all means, everyone needs to read this book. Like, I felt like it was so fulfilling. We talked about books that we always come back to. We all talked about All About Love by Bell Hooks, which you mentioned in this book. And I feel like this is going to be on my shelf for decades to come. And I'm going to keep picking it up and I'm going to keep passing it on and telling people to buy it themselves. You can't borrow this book.
We're not doing that here.
You're going to buy it? Support it.
Monetary support.
Right.
Specifically.
But Chrissy, thank you so much.
Oh, thank you for having me. This was such a great, honestly, this was such a nourishing conversation. I mean that. This was beautiful. Thank you for having me.
I feel like I just got to, I feel like I didn't know you, but I feel like I knew, right? And then it was just like expanded so much. And I just feel so seen. Thank you for like choosing to get the courage to like write this.
Oh, thank you.
Like when you talk about liberation, it's like you truly like freed up so many people and like, your contribution.
Oh my gosh, that makes my heart very happy. Thank you.
And we will be waiting on book number 2 because we know it's coming.
Yes.
And then we're going to have you back.
Oh gosh, I love it. I would
for part 2 with Chrissy King. But for now, our beautiful audience, our just amazing community that we've cultivated here. I am Deja Riley.
And I am Alicia Ferguson. And this is your weekly dose of duality. And until next time, we'll see you.
Yeah, we'll see you soon.
Leave a review, y'all. I didn't we didn't say that, but let's say that.
Do that, please.
If you're enjoying this conversation, like leave us a review.
Do
somewhere
that.
around here. Till next time. Peace, y'all. Woo! We just sat with the book baddie herself,
We
the
sure did.
manifested mommy. That conversation was wildly amazing.
Listen, so full, so
Very.
nourishing. We kept coming back to that word. It was just nourishing. It filled me right on up.
Yeah. It's like when just like dope Black women get together.
Right.
That's what that felt like.
It's an unstoppable force. It really is.
Cue insert a song. Was there an Unstoppable song? I feel like there was a. We'll figure it out. No,
but for some reason I'm thinking like Alicia Keys.
That's what I was. It sounds like big.
Yeah,
like stadium.
She does sing like I Am a Superwoman song, right?
Okay.
Or Girl on Fire. I don't know.
Yes,
Yes, hit them notes.
I'm working on it, y'all.
Anyways, the conversation was just magical. And it leads me to our quote. And I don't want to mess this up. So I wrote it down.
Read that thing.
I'm going to read that thing. We read the book in its entirety, and there was so many gems in the book.
Yeah.
But there was this one quote that stuck out in particular to me. It's by Stephanie Chen, and it says, "This body is just the keeper, or is just the keeper of my magic." I have to do it again. This body is just the keeper of my magic, which I love.
Yeah.
You know?
We're so much more than just our bodies.
We are.
Spirit, soul.
Yes.
All the things.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm.
All right, y'all. Until next time, like, share. We'll see you. Peace.
If you enjoyed this episode of Dose of Duality, the podcast, be sure to subscribe, like, comment, and share with others.
When you start talking about it, I was like, she gonna mention Chloe? Because there was a
I
whole
know,
show.
I know.
It's coming. It's coming.
No, there's a whole show.
I love that you said, like, Tristan already put her through so much. This is not the time for us to pile it on.
She already.
Right, yes.
I mean, at this point now, it's a little getting to self-imposed now.
No,
right.
Tristan, I'm like, but you
As
know
her
what?
being the one in the family that they, because them old
Oh my
episodes,
gosh,
they
wait.
dogged her.
Yeah.
It
Have
was
you seen the
bad.
episode where Caitlyn Jenner, what was Caitlyn before?
Chris.
Oh, Chris.
No. Bruce Jenner.
Bruce Jenner.
There we
Have
go.
you seen the episode where Bruce Jenner is? I just saw this clip recently. Bruce Jenner is telling her, like, you know, you could stand to lose a few pounds, etc., like on camera, and she's like, "I'm not fat, I'm big bone." He's like, "Sure, that's what you tell yourself." He's like, "That's why you walk around wearing all black all the time to try to," and like literally, and I'm like, wow, like imagine your stepfather saying this to you on a show that's being taped, that's going to air for the
National.
on national,
Yeah.
and everyone always saying you're the ugly sister, and like